So somebody probably just slid into your face and you're ready to finally learn something about omnidirectional movement. Make some improvements, learn some jump shots, some drop shots, some slides, some dives. What do you need to know to get better? Well, I've got some tips for you, whether you're just trying to impress some buddies hopping on with a nice trick shot, you're trying to push some rank maybe, or make a couple improvement points at KD. I've put over 100 hours into the omnidirectional movement system from Black Ops 6 to now playing it on Warzone, and I will say it is 100% learnable to figure out some of these moves. You got to drill it in a little bit, but I'm going to go over the optimal settings, some of the effective techniques that you can take advantage of, as well as some good ways that you can practice it and hone in on those skills. There's also timestamps in the description down below that you can click through and kind of skip to the parts that you want to see and maybe even revisit or send to a buddy. But let's dive into it because I got a lot of tips for you from what I've learned. We're going to start with some of the basics, but it's important that you have a good foundation with this. Head over to the Movement tab, and the first thing you're going to want to have on is Sprint Assist. Now, many controller players, and even in the past, you might have run Tactical Sprint Assist. Still a great option if you want to keep it, but the benefit of not having Tac Sprint is that you'll be quicker to aim down sight versus the Tactical Sprint to aim down sight. You come around a corner at normal Omni movement speed, you'll be able to pull that gun faster than somebody who's Tac Sprinting, which could give you the jump, especially when it comes to sprint to fire time. Now, on mouse and keyboard, which this video is for mouse and key as well as controller, I think you'll have a lot of lessons and can figure out how to implement it into your gameplay. I find it quite simple to utilize the shift key to sprint and manage when I'm ready to tactically sprint across a field or not. Another important setting to have with that is the tactical sprint activation. By default, this is sent to single tap sprint, but by having it as single tap run, you can already be holding shift and then hit forwards, and it will immediately send you into tactical sprint versus having to hit forwards and then shift. Just gives you a bit more flexibility. The main reason we want to have that on, though, is to quickly engage the sliding of omnidirectional movement or even diving. If you're coming out of firing and want to immediately slide, you don't want to have to be clicking in on the left stick or hitting shift every single time because you may misclick it and then be moving at normal speed and not be able to engage the slide to get that slide off or push or whatever you're trying to do. I never ran this in the past. This is the first time that I'm running the automatic sprint on outside of when I play on controller. It is critical that you drill in yourself the timing of when you can slide, though. It takes a little bit of momentum buildup before you can actually get the slide to trigger. If you do it too soon, you will just crouch a dead slide and get yourself killed because you're crouching out in the middle of the open, literally slowing yourself down, making yourself an easier target rather than a more difficult one. While you're waiting for games to load, go into the firing range and just practice the timing of sliding side to side, even backwards, forwards, as much as you can. You'll notice as well, if you do it too quickly, back to back, you'll actually lose some momentum. You got to make sure you're all the way up to momentum before doing it. As long as you don't dead slide, though, you'll be good. Now, if you're not tactical sprinting, as I'm normal sprinting here, if you slide, you actually move faster than normal running. The fastest is, of course, still tactical sprinting. If you're out of tactical sprint, it does pay to throw in a slide to get some extra speed. Not necessarily going uphill, but going downhill especially. This is a big change where you can now slide forever when you're going down a hill, which lets you move incredibly quick or catch somebody who hasn't realized this change yet. But even if you're just trying to move from cover to cover, you can slide a lot further than you probably think. You don't always want to just immediately slide and stand right back up. You're not taking advantage of that full extra movement speed that you have while you're sliding. Additionally, my favorite thing to do is while I'm reloading, it looks like you're moving too slow to slide, but you still can. In fact, even when you are stunned, you can still slide while stunned, which will give you that little extra movement speed to get out of the way. And because you can now ADS while sliding and shoot accurately while doing so, this is a fantastic way to slide into a room and go for shots. And if you haven't realized it yet, you can also slide into a prone now. Previously, this would block you and there would be an extra long animation for it. Now it is a seamless transition into supine prone. The thing you need to be cautious of for this, though, is if, say, you wanted to slide into a corner, your legs will actually be sticking out in front of you here. So you're actually a bigger target versus, say, diving to the corner and then taking a peek as so. your body is now protected because your legs are behind you. You're not exposing as much of yourself. One other thing to note is, and you'll see this more in third person than first, when you quickly flick one direction and back, your character sometimes moves in very strange ways, especially when you slide straight backwards and then stand up. The animations aren't perfectly smooth, so you become a much harder target to hit. So it may not even seem like it on your screen with the way that it looks in first person, like it's smooth and everything's seamless. You'll be more difficult to hit by making a move, or especially if you have tactical sprint up and you try and go in one direction and then flick and go back the same direction you were. You might need to have a high enough sensitivity on controller to do this, etc. But tac sprinting one direction and then sliding back the other, tac sprinting one direction, backsliding, all can throw somebody off, especially with higher time to kills in Warzone with more health. You might be able to slip away in more fights than you anticipate if you're really moving, especially trying to dodge some snipers. Now, when you have a long area that you need to actually cover, you can tac sprint it, but you will run out. There's a perk called Sprinter that'll give you infinite tac sprint. However, you can also switch to your knife and have infinite tactical sprint, obviously moving you at knife speed, which is going to be much faster. Hold down melee to activate this. If you're on mouse, I recommend setting an individual bind. I have mine set to 3. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can switch to it if you need to just get a quick movement speed burst and get to cover. An extra note for controller players on movement as well. You may have heard of Rotational Aim Assist if you've been away from the game for a while. Not only is there aim assist that will slow as you get over an enemy, but if you are engaging your left stick and actually moving your character or strafing, additional aim assist will kick on to help you glue to the target. So if you're ever trying to track somebody far away, make sure you are somewhat moving that left stick, approximately at least 20% input on it. Will add a lot more tracking, especially if you're trying to follow people parachuting in or at, well, any range. From 3 meters and closer, though, aim assist does die down. It was completely off during the beta. Now there is less the closer that you are to a player sub 3 meters. Likewise, if you see a smoke grenade, you will lose aim assist when a player is in a smoke. I see this all the time in clips where people are chasing somebody running into smoke and then their aim starts going all over the place because they're not getting any aim assist and they're just going way too far. Take it down 50% of what you're trying to do when you see a smoke. Make a conscious effort when you see it to stay on target properly and not overcorrect. Now I want to touch on mantling. And in general, this will get you killed. It is often very slow to mantle up. You can no longer do the trick to instantly get your gunfire going if you're tac sprinting into a mantle. They fixed all of that. You need to be much more conscious if you decide to make that decision. Likewise, if you have this setting off, grounded mantle, it's on by default, but a lot of people turn this off, including myself, for a very long time. However, with the speed of this game, having this on just saves you time. Rather than having to jump and then hit jump again to activate that mantle, you only need to push it once and it will instantly just send you on your way. This is the most important when it comes to windows. If you want to just quickly side mantle in, if you're ever in trouble trying to get a plate in and jump through a window, you can still perfectly time it as well. This will save you from canceling your reload if you can successfully jump your way through. However, this doesn't always work. And if you just are panicking, whatever the situation is, you're getting sprayed down, you need to get in quickly, this will ensure that you get out of the way without that screw up. It will screw you up if you are, say, shooting and you try to jump, or you're reloading and you jump and now it cancels it. There is a setting to even turn off here, mantle cancel reload. However, the more you practice with this, I think it significantly will help your game, especially if you need to make 2 or 3 mantles in a row. It cuts the amount of clicks in half. I'll show you an example. There's a lot of these points here that you need to make a couple mantles up. And if you can just quickly hit each of them with less button inputs, it becomes a lot more fluid, especially for these kind of half mantles versus one that you need to do a full jump up on. That's always going to be a little bit slower. Now, what I personally have had the most trouble with is successfully going prone. You will accidentally dive, especially with that automatic tac sprint on. I have tried pretty much every single setting here, including turning off sprint restore. I tried even setting it so I would only sprint with hold to sprint, but even if I release that button to slow down, you could be moving just fast enough that you'll do a little baby tiny dive and get yourself killed when you don't mean to. So when you can actually pull prone intentionally, it is incredibly important that you don't accidentally dive and you pull prone. I love to go prone when I'm reloading. I just go prone. And the main way you do this then is by hitting ADS and then going prone. This will instantly stop your momentum, even if you hit them both at the exact same time, to guarantee that you don't ever dive like that accidentally. It's still always going to be difficult to do, but the better that you can get at it. See, I got stunned here. You can still slide through stuns. Good example there. Obviously, you can't turn still, but anyways, also to note, the same thing can be done for crouching. If you're ever sneaking up in a building or onto somebody, you can hit right-click, crouch to prevent yourself from sliding, and then just sneak up on somebody. Now, there's also a walk button that I've set mine to toggle for, and I've also gone in and set it to the fastest setting for walk speed, but it's still not as fast as normal walking. Controller players, you will be able to far more fine-tune your individual speeds, but from what I can tell, you move about just as fast at that fastest walking speed as you do crouched, and this is great if you want to just go in and not have any sprint to fire time and instantaneously shoot. So if you know you're going to be catching somebody off guard, sneaking up on them, and then being able to instantly open fire without having to sprint to fire on them, that could save you, another 100 milliseconds and win you the fight, as well as keep you even quieter with non-existent footstep audio in this game as is. If you really want to sneak on somebody, though, when you are supine, it is very difficult for players to spot you. We're so used to seeing people prone in the normal position facing this way that when you see somebody facing this way, you think they're dead half the time, especially if you're completely still. A lot of times, if you're out in a bush or in a dark corner, you will get away with a free kill by just staying prone in this fashion. You will just go prone flat in the direction that you're looking, and then you'll turn around towards your legs. So if you want to do it the other direction, of course, back up this way, and then you can turn in there. Now, in Warzone, you need a perk called Dexterity to give you better control of your character when jumping, sliding, and diving. But even with this perk, look at how much this weapon wobbles around and moves when you try to jump shot. It is quite a bit. You need to pull down quite aggressively to kind of keep that fire steady with where you are aiming, even with the perk. That being said, this is how I've lost the majority of my gunfights by playing Black Ops 6 in multiplayer, is trying to go for jump shots. They still are effective. You really have to learn to pull down at the same time and control that. But I've found that most of the time, it's better to slide or even go for a drop shot. Drop shots are very slow in this game. However, especially if you're point blank on somebody, it can catch them off guard. And I would also suggest when you drop to also move diagonally at the same time. Rather than just going backwards, try to move sideways while you are proning, just to make it that little extra bit harder to hit you. On the note of drop shots, you can no longer snake. You can see how slow I'm going here, and I will actually tell you, if you look at this in third person, you stay crouched the entire time. It does not look good at all. It is not worth it. What players would do is they would go up to a ledge and continue to go up and down like this to get quick information and go prone. But even this, you can see how much slower it is. They've completely removed that from the game, so it's not worth it to do these quick peeks anymore. Now, the other element, of course, I haven't touched on is diving. To be honest with you, this to me is much more of a flashy effect than it is a super practical one that you're always going to want to use. When you dive, you leave yourself stranded in a 1 second animation standing up. You have much more flexibility by just sliding versus diving. And of course, when you are in air, it is now easy to be predicted of where you're going to go next. A slide can be canceled at any point, whether you take the full slide for it or you just do a quick little slide. They've got to actually track you and stop where you are, versus you know exactly where they're going to go from physics if they're in the air. Some games you can change your momentum magically when you're in the air. You cannot in this game unless you're off of a zipline skydiving. Now, the most advanced tech that I can give you here is if you actually dive onto a ledge, it makes you stand up a slight bit faster. That could catch somebody off guard. See how I never even fully went prone there, especially inside buildings onto counters. this can be super effective to just completely throw somebody off guard if they're chasing you or if you are trying to push them. Didn't work there because I didn't kind of get off of the ledge, but if you come through the window, it kind of stands you back up right away. It's a very minor thing, but you might get some good use out of it. And while usually when I'm reloading, I'll go prone or slide, occasionally I will dive while reloading or dive to just make it in zone for that last-ditch effort. And if you're on the XP farm, there's actually quite a few challenges for just diving straight forwards or even sideways and then killing somebody. That could be a nice XP bump. I also had a couple other tips I wanted to share that I've learned over all of these hours that I know I would want to know if I was a new player to the game off of the start. One of them is with sniping. So if you are holding down your shift key or your hold breath button, and then you aim down sight, you can see those little icons disappear at the bottom, and I'm holding my breath to get a steady shot. The way this works is once you take a shot, you'll see I'm still holding the button down, but I lose my breath, and I'm going to have to release and hold it down again in order to get my breath steady. Usually when I snipe, I like to just hold down the shift key. You cannot do that. Every time you release ADS, you need to release your hold breath key and pull it again to make sure you have steady aim. Even if you don't take a shot, get in the habit of releasing breath at the same time. Weapons in this game also have a consistent recoil pattern. So when you see somebody absolutely lasering every time they use the gun, it may not even be the aim assist, but well, it's going to have to be you are correctly countering the recoil pattern. So the more you play with a specific gun, in between games, actually shoot walls, look at the pattern, practice, know the beginning. If you're only going to shoot for the first burst of the PP here for the first 20 bullets or so, you know that you only need to counter down to the right. It's been like this for a few years, ever since they added a ballistic system where you have to actually lead your shots, deal with bullet drop. Something unique on that front, though, the way that bullet velocity works is a bit odd in this game because there actually is still hit scan. Based on your gun's velocity out to these ranges, your gun is perfectly hit scan. Meaning, if your crosshair is right on the target and you click the button, it will instantly register that hit. That bullet doesn't actually have to travel from your gun to the target. So even if we're talking about sniper rifles, which get up to 900 meters per second in this game, that can one-shot sub 40 meters quite easily. You just need to put it directly on their head. No lead, no drop. It hit scans onto them. Awesome chart here that I found from Exclusive Ace. Highly recommend you check his videos out if you haven't. Also, a couple more notes of things that you might have missed, especially if you haven't been around for a while. You can still reload cancel your gun. They took this away with Warzone 2, and it would just continue the animation even if you tried to cancel. Now it will properly cancel it and keep whatever ammo you have left in your magazine, even if you've pulled the thing out. This can come in handy if you start that reload, though, and somebody starts pushing you, especially because a lot of these weapons have very slow reload times. And there is no longer a fast hands perk to quicker reload. It is specifically tied with the magazine of each of the guns if you decide to bring it. And even with those, it's still quite slow. There's also a keybind dedicated for body shield. However, this does not work in Warzone currently, but I've set mine to scroll wheel up and down. There's a separate setting that you can find deeper within mouse calibration here, though, in advanced mouse settings. You can also search for it. That you need to turn down, though, the mouse wheel delay. By default, it's around 250, so you need to turn this down so that way you can just spam your scroll wheel and try and grab the person successfully if you're trying to sneak up behind them. Hopefully they'll fix that soon for Warzone, though. Regardless, if you're on mouse or controller, though, I would recommend going to the body shield finisher move behavior and switch this to prioritize body shield. So that way, if you hold down melee like you would normally go for an execution on somebody, instead, you will grab them and use them as a shield. I would say most of the time, that's the better thing to do, and you can then instantly snap their neck if that's what you really want to do. You can also go into interface, readability, gameplay HUD, and bring the HUD option all the way in. I'm going to go through all of my settings in another video and talk about it more. They don't have all of the same settings that they even have from multiplayer, at least right now in the game, but I would recommend switching this to square just so you have the additional corners of the minimap that would be cut off from the rounded edges. The Tac Map has quite a bit new with it now as well. You'll see little dots for people that are outside of the radius of your map further out. If your overall outer perimeter of the map is highlighted in red, that means you're on somebody else's UAV. You don't need the same perk that's in multiplayer for this. And that arrow above the little diamond means they're vertically above you. And if the arrow is under, it means they're below you. It's not the arrow pointing to where they are. It's telling the relative height to where your position is. That one, still, I get people surprised when I mention that, so I always like to include it in these tip videos. Now, if you didn't get Black Ops 6 multiplayer, to actually practice and implement these things, you are pretty limited. The firing range in this game is very weak. It's at least better than what it was. There's more targets in here, and they do respawn quicker. You can also hit X or whatever the respective key is on controller to bring these dummies down and get an additional thing to shoot. Of course, while games are loading, you can throw in your slides. There's no longer these bars covering the fire, so if you want to do some strafe practice, etc., you can. Plunder is not to be slept on, and in particular, you can make this more fun for yourself if you really try to see how big of a kill streak you can go on. Rather than playing the objective and looting and getting as much cash as you can, just go after and hunt the most valued target, whoever has the most cash, get into some good fights, and really treat it as if you are in a battle royale. You can also just go into Warzone boot camp, go up against other bots and worse players. You're not going to get as much XP here, but you're really trying to get practice and repetitions in, especially if you're starting out the day. Although you want to push fights on this, you need to get into more engagements, which is honestly one of the reasons I think Resurgence is such a good mode, but you still have to spend a lot of time looting and getting gear versus just going in, spawning with your loadout every time and getting some repetitions. Oftentimes, especially for new players, I see them just playing Battle Royale, even some solos, trying to hide and stay alive to the top 10, top 5, whatever, and then getting in a fight, maybe 1 or 2 kills on board, but they don't have the skill to actually compete on it yet. You got to work on this movement, make sure that you can actually compete in those fights and give your shot at actually winning the game rather than just getting lucky and winning a game. Now, if you do have multiplayer, honestly, just going into the core playlist is pretty good. You're not going to get the full feel of the game because the time to kill is very different, but what you can do is go down to a private match. I did this all the time throughout, ever since Warzone 1, really. You can set up a team with bots once this is finished loading. Put on 4 or 5. You could even go up to 12, 11 bots here, 12 players in the lobby. Started on Recruit. You'll get a feel for it. Usually I only put 4 or 5 at the most players and go for the smallest of the maps. You can even bump up their difficulty a bit, but the main thing you want to do is go to the player settings and change this to 300, which will simulate 150 base health and 150 plate health, 300 in Warzone, so you actually have some good opportunity to practice controlling your recoil, staying on target, work on your rotational aim assist, everything that we've talked about in this video. I'd also suggest starting slow rather than doing everything at once. My first 5 hours of this game, even with all the experience and everything that I have, was not even sliding. I was playing a lot more defensively and really getting a feel for the game more so. And then when that felt like it was clicking, I started to throw in some more slides, starting to push a bit more, all the while drilling in myself the holding ADS while proning, doing less jump shotting, more slide shotting or drop shotting. But I will say this game is still extremely difficult to stay on target for with this extra movement because the other people on the other end are going to be doing this as well, which is where it comes down to the tactics, the positioning that you're at, working together with your team, your callouts. There's so many other factors that go into this. That's one of the reasons that I like the game so much, is a lot of the tactics rather than the pure skill, because there's only so much that I could even do on a mouse in general on this against some of the aim assist. But take as much advantage of what you can. Get better as a player. Hopefully this guide gives you some insight from myself and what I've done overall in my gameplay so far, and I'll keep you guys updated in the streams. Feel free to come by, give me any of the tips that you have, even in the comments down below, if there's any other updates or ideas that you've had work for you. With that, double check your subscribe so I see you in the next video, and thanks so much for watching. StoneMouse64, over and out.